Hi everyone, it's Annie from Manor Farms Homestead. Today I'm going to be talking to you about cast iron cookware. So if you have this that you're currently using in your home, every now and then you're going to want to revive or refresh the pans that you're using, and that's just updating their seasoning. If you get brand new cookware that's cast iron, you'll need to season it for the first time before you start using it. We're also going to talk about rescuing old iron skillet or cast iron cookware. This is really gross. It's got a little rust, it's got a lot of gunky, cooked on, tacky, hard stuff that you cannot wash off. I've soaked these in Dawn dish detergent. This stuff doesn't come out. It has to be burnt out. So we're gonna start off with cast iron cookware that you likely already have in your kitchen and are using on a day-to-day basis. So the seasoning on that pan is very important. So it should have a nice glossy surface. These are some pans that I use routinely, but they have lost some of that glossy seasoning just from long-standing use, washing them out, and I'll talk to you more about washing iron skillets in just a little bit. But they basically just needed a new seasoning put on them. So what I did yesterday, I put them in a 500-degree oven and cooked them for about 3.5 hours, basically till they stopped smoking. So any little particulates of food burnt off of these pans, and it kind of cooked it back to where there was really not much seasoning left on this pan. So today we've covered them with a light layer of, I actually used Crisco, but you can use any type of grease or oil that has a high smoke point. That's going to be key. Don't use something that burns at a really low temperature like butter. You need to use something that will tolerate a 500+ degree oven. It's going to smoke some, but ultimately it burns off and it forms this glossy non-stick coating on your cookware, which is called seasoning, and that's what makes your cast iron cookware non-stick. So I've got 3 pans here. These are my work cows in the kitchen currently, and they're all ready to go into the oven and just bake this seasoning on. They've all been greased down with Crisco. Again, use whatever oil you want, just make sure it has a high smoke point. Whenever you coat these pans, you want to do the entire skillet. So the outside, the handle, every crevice of this pan needs to be covered with a light coating of whatever oil you're using. You can use a little bit more on the inside of the skillets, but do a light coating on the outside and every inch of your pan. Now, if you have just bought an iron skillet from the store, it comes unseasoned. So you would basically be starting with a pan like this where I've burnt everything off of these. You'd start with a pan like this, coat it down with your oil. It's going to go into a 500-degree oven, probably 3.5 to 4 hours until it stops smoking and until it's not greasy anymore. It just has a slick, shiny surface. So that's your initial seasoning of your cast iron pan. Now, if you get to the point where you go to a garage store or a garage sale and find some old cast iron stuff like this for a couple of bucks, these are actually worth a lot of money, and they can easily be revived, rescued to the point where they can become a staple in your kitchen for cooking. So what you want to do with these, there's a couple of routes. Since I'm already going to have my oven on seasoning these pans at about 500 degrees, I'm just going to throw these iron skillets in there with it and let them go for probably 4 hours or so till they don't smoke anymore, until all this gunky, tacky, unseasoned oil burns off of them. Another option would be if your oven has a self-cleaning feature and it's one of those days where your oven needs a good cleaning, take pans like this and throw them in your oven while you do the self-clean mode. It will burn everything off. They'll come out just like your oven. You can wipe it down with a wet cloth. Same thing here. They'll be stripped back to like a new pan that needs its initial seasoning. So today we're just gonna have these in our 500-degree oven until it burns everything off, and we can get them seasoned thereafter. This morning I've gotten all of the pans out of the oven. We actually got a little bit sidetracked yesterday and had to run into town, so these did not cook quite as long as I would have liked them to. So we're probably at about 3.5 hours rather than 4+ hours. For the most part, my pans turned out really well. This one here is a good example of how it should turn out. It's nice and shiny, front and back. A good coating on it. I do have this one here that looks like it needs a little bit more seasoning. You can see those spots there in the center that are not bright and shiny. So we're gonna re-grease that area and put it back in to bake with the other pans today. This one turned out pretty good. On this one side, there's a few little areas that also I feel like could use a little bit more greasing and baking. The ones that were desperately in need of reviving, this one I've already washed out the inside, but it pretty much burnt all the stuff off of it. A few little rust spots on the back, we'll get those washed off and get this entire pan greased and back in the oven. Now the ones that had a lot of goopy gunky stuff, that kind of baked down almost into kind of a seasoning look. I'm thinking that these pans would have done better with running them through the self-clean feature on the oven. But we're going to go with this, and I'm going to get them greased down, and we'll bake them off for at least 4 hours today with a fresh coat of grease and see how they do. If I'm not quite pleased with it, I can always throw them into the self-clean option on my oven and burn everything off and start back over. So after you've gotten your non-seasoned cast iron pans out of the oven, you'll want to just wash them out with some warm soapy water. I use Dawn dish soap, a little sponge with a scrubby side. The little plastic scrubbers work well too. And basically I'm just getting out any ash, any hard food particles that cooked off during that long baking process. I've got all of these greased up and ready to go back in the oven. Like I mentioned before, I had a couple of spots on my well-seasoned pans that needed to be hit just a little bit more. So we're going to put them back in with the pans that were unseasoned. As you can see, I went a little bit heavier on the Crisco and the ones that are going to be seasoned for the first time today because I didn't want to have to spot treat them like I did some of my pans that we were seasoning yesterday. So we'll get these into a 500-degree oven, and we're going to let them go today for at least 4 hours. All right, we got the final step. I've got all of the pans loaded into my oven. I use 3 racks so I can fit all of these pans into one oven since I'm going to run it at 500 degrees for quite a few hours. We've got our pans that needed a little extra seasoning, plus the ones that were unseasoned and are now going in for their first seasoning. One thing you'll want to keep in mind during this whole process is to run your hood vent. So we're going to get our hood vent turned on. It will get quite smoky in your house if you don't have good ventilation, so make sure you're running that hood vent. At times you may need to open a window. We're heating these pans with this grease in them up to the smoke point so that it burns onto the pan and leaves a nice coating. So there is smoke involved with this process. That's normal. That's what you want to have going on in order to have good seasoning on your pans. So our cast iron cookware came out of the oven after about 4 hours. I've let it cool so I can handle it. I want to show you how nice and glossy it turned out. This is all hardened. So while it looks like it should be tacky, it's not. This is just a solid, hard, non-stick surface now. So this was one of the pans that needed to be seasoned initially. Our little ones, these were the ones I was a little concerned about because they had some baked on stuff All of this is hard. There's nothing tacky on this. It's all glossy and non-stick at this point. So we're gonna go with this. All of the pans that I've been using on a routine basis that just needed a little touching up turned out perfect. So I was really pleased with my seasoning process. One thing to keep in mind moving forward and maintaining your cast iron cookware, when you clean your cast iron cookware, it's okay to use some soap, but only in certain circumstances. So if I were to fry some cornbread or something like that, bake a loaf of cornbread in this pan, the only thing I would do at the end of that is wipe it out with a paper towel and make sure there's no food particles left in there. Now, if you're searing off a steak in this pan, you're definitely going to need to wash it. And what I usually will do for washing cast iron cookware is use a little warm water, Dawn dish detergent, and a plastic scrubber, just to make sure that I can get all of the food particles off. Just don't be super aggressive with it so that you maintain that cooktop, that seasoned cooktop that you've created. Word to the wise, never, ever, ever put your cast iron cookware in the dishwasher. Shortly after Nate and I got married, he put one of my cast iron skillets into the dishwasher. So that was a life learning experience for him, but yes, you can't put cast iron cookware in the dishwasher. You can wash it with some gentle soap and water in the sink if it's really dirty. If you can avoid washing it and all you've cooked in it is something that's not really made it dirty, just wipe it out with a paper towel and go. So that's it for cast iron cookware, seasoning, and maintaining. Hope you enjoyed.